Hello everyone, welcome to Sharmit. In this session, we are going to discuss about another method to apply CSS to HTML page, that is internal CSS method. Prior to this session, we discussed about inline CSS method. Today we are going to discuss about internal CSS method. But before we start the discussion, I would like to recommend you to please go and check out the previously released sessions first, because they all are in proper sequence and sync. So if you follow them sequentially, then it would be much easier for you to understand the ongoing topic, because for time being we are just mainly focusing on the internal CSS method. Okay, so by the end of this session you will be able to understand what is internal CSS method, how to apply internal CSS method, what are the advantages, what are the disadvantages, and what are those specific conditions where we are supposed to use internal CSS method. Okay, fine. So I think now we are good to start with the session. And if we talk about the code is very simple and straightforward. Here we are just using one title in the head section, and there is one heading which is showing CSS Cascading Style Sheets by Sharmit. So if I show you the output, it is coming like this only. So when I refresh the browser, you can see CSS Cascading Style Sheets by Sharmit is printed as a heading. Now what we will do here, we will include another heading just to show the topic name, today's session topic name. So for that I will use h2, which will define the heading 2, and here I'll write internal CSS method. Okay, so this is main topic for today's session, internal CSS method. Now to explain this thing, we need some paragraphs just to show you some examples or practical things. So let's include few paragraph here. So I'll write here p tag. Here I will write sample para 1. Likewise, we will copy this para multiple time. So 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let's put some numbers, change the numbers so that you can easily see like how it is impacting the paragraphs. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 5. Fine. So we have created 5 paragraphs. So total in body section, like we have 5 paragraphs and 2 heading. Now what we will do, we will apply the internal CSS, and by just applying one internal CSS, you can apply the CSS style to all these paragraphs. How? I'll tell you. But before we see that, let me tell you the exact definition, because sometime in interviews you should know what exactly the term is, right? So you should know what is internal CSS. So if someone asks you in interview like what is internal CSS, so you can simply say that internal CSS is a method that involves placing CSS rule inside a style tag within the head section. Style tag, not style attribute. In case of inline CSS, we were using style attribute, but this time we are talking about the style tag that will be placed in the head section of HTML document. Okay, in this case, these style, whatever style we are applying, will be applied to all the element on the page that match the selector defined in the style block. So if you remember, when we talked about the syntax of CSS, at that time we talked about the selector, different type of selector, right? So now we will use those selectors, and as per those selector value or as per the selectors of those block, it will apply CSS to all required elements. Clear? Now sometime in interviews you might be asked with the question in a different way, like what is embedded CSS? So don't get confused. Embedded CSS is just an alternative name for internal CSS. Okay, so both internal CSS and external both internal CSS and embedded CSS are the same thing, but they are known for, like, this is just an alternative name for the internal CSS. Clear? So now this thing is clear that internal CSS or embedded CSS involves the process where we are applying the CSS rule directly to the style tag, not style attribute, okay, within the head section of HTML document, and these style apply to elements on the page that match the selector defined in the style block. Clear? Fine. So now what we will do, we will see by applying some properties. So let's go to the head section, because we know we are going to apply property to head section. So here what I'll do, I'll add one comment first. So let's add the comment. Here I'll write applying internal CSS. Okay, after this what we will do, here we will use the element name which is internal, not internal, sorry, we will use here style element. Okay, so just write style. Now in this block, whatever you will write here will be applied to all the required or assigned selector value. Let me show you how. So just assume a scenario, we wanted to color this all these paragraphs. So let me show you the output first. Currently it is showing like this. Okay, sample para 1 2 3 4 5. Now what I wanted to do, I want to change the color of these paragraph to red, and I also want to change the size of this font to 50 pixel, but only for these things. Okay, not for the headings. So in that case what I can do, I can simply go to my style tag. Here I will write my selector. So I'm sure that yes, my selector is paragraph, because I want to apply CSS to paragraphs only. So I can simply write here p tag, not tag, just p. Okay, because this is a selector. Then I will use the curly braces. In curly braces, once curly braces is started, then I can apply the property. For example, color. So I can put color as red. It automatically adds the semicolon to separate this with next property. So now if you want to apply another property, you can apply. For example, here I will apply the font size. In font size I will write 50 pixel. That's it. So we have just added 2 lines, and these 2 lines will affect the entire paragraph section of our page. Doesn't matter if you are using 5 or 50, in fact 5000, how many, like, doesn't matter how many paragraphs are there, it will apply the effect to all paragraphs. So let's save it and refresh the browser. So once you refresh the browser, you can see that yes, all paragraph color has been changed to red, and the size is also changed to 50 pixels. Clear? Now the next question and next thing that we should pay attention to is the heading. You can see it doesn't change the color and size of heading. Why? Because we have not write anything for the H1 selector or H2 selector. So let's say if you want to apply same thing to H1 selector, or maybe different thing, so you can write the selector like this. Here you can write color. So let's change the color to blue. I'm not changing style size of this, so I can save it and refresh it. So now you can see the CSS is only applied to the first heading. Why? Because the selector was H1, not H2. Clear? So I think now you have good idea like how we can apply the internal CSS to a HTML content or HTML element. Now we will talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages of internal CSS. So let's start with the advantages first. The first advantage of internal CSS is it is centralized. Yes, because internal CSS allows you to define styles for an entire page in one place and makes it easier to manage as compared to inline CSS, right? Because in case of inline CSS we have to write everything again and again, but here everything is centralized. Second thing is reusability. Yes, style defined in the style block can be applied to multiple elements on the page, including the reducing the code duplication. So there is no need to duplicate the code lines. You can simply write it. You can see here we have just noted down 2 lines, right? And it is applied to all paragraph. But if we were doing it with inline CSS, in that case we are supposed to apply to each paragraph. So that's why we are saying that it is reusable. Separation of concern. Yes, while not as clean as external CSS, but still internal CSS still separate styling from HTML structure, making the code more organized than inline CSS. Here the code is organized, right? We are not writing anything here in the HTML structure. We are just keeping it everything in the header section, which makes it much more cleaner as compared to inline CSS. But in case of external, we will remove it from here also. That we will see. Okay. Then we have no external files is required. Yes, that is also true, because here you can see there is no need to use any other file. You can write it in a HTML itself. Fine. Fifth point is higher specificity than external CSS. Yes, if you're comparing it with internal CSS and inline CSS, then internal CSS has lesser specificity, but when we are talking about internal and external, in that case internal has higher specificity. Okay, so the first specificity level is, first priority would be given to inline, then internal, and then external. Clear? So these are some advantages. Now let's talk about the disadvantages also. The first disadvantage is it is limited to a single page. Why? Because internal CSS only applies to the page it's defined in. If you want to use the same styling across multiple pages, then you will need to duplicate the style block, which is inefficient. Clear? Just assume a scenario where your website contains 5 or more than 5 pages. So in that case, you are not supposed to write everything again and again. That's why we consider it as a limitation, that yes, we can apply this only, although we can apply it multiple pages, but it would be time taking. So always prefer this. This style is preferred only for the single page. It increases the size of HTML file for sure, because we are writing everything in HTML itself, so it will increase the size of the HTML file. It is not ideal for the large project. Yes, as I mentioned, like if there are multiple pages, then in that case we are not supposed to use it for multi pages again and again. Okay, so yeah, these are some of the disadvantages of internal CSS. Now the question comes, then why and when to use this? So you can use internal CSS when you are working with single page website or a small project where external CSS is not necessary. Okay, so in such situation you can use the internal CSS. Then the next thing is prototyping or testing. Because in prototype testing styles quickly without creating the external file. There is no need to create external file, that's why it is efficient. Then project with unique page specific style that don't need to be reused across multiple pages. Okay, so yeah, these are some scenarios, like make it very clear in your mind that whenever there is a large project, it's always better to go for the external CSS. But if you want to if you don't want to use inline CSS and you want to keep everything in the same file, then in that case you can go with the internal CSS. Okay, so yeah, that's all for today. In the next session we will discuss few more things. So thank you for watching Tech Sharmit.